Welcome, everybody, to the Fieldhouse right here on Texas Football, a new show. I'm Blake Munroe, the host, where I'm joined by Carl Padilla of the Padilla Poll, Coach Bob Shipley, Brownwood, Rotan, Burnett. You've been a little bit of everywhere, Coach Shipley, and then Coach Tim Buchanan of Lido. Very honored to have you three here. I've been joking online that I should call this Three Goats and a Scrub because you guys know your stuff. Y'all are the greatest, and then I'm here. So honored to be here with y'all. I appreciate y'all joining me each and every Friday as we go forward through the Texas high school football season. But I want to just jump right into it, guys. It's opening weekend, and I actually would like to start with the coaches and kind of get y'all's thoughts on, what is going through the minds of not only the players but the coaches on this opening weekend.
Go ahead, Buck.
Well, right now there's a lot of indecisions. I know the guys I talked to, or talked to Carl yesterday, and he was talking about, one coach said that they're going to get the crap beat out of them. Of course, they're ranked in the top of the state, so that side of it, you're going to hear a lot of coach speak. We're not any good. We don't know if we're any good. And honestly, in your mind, you're unsure. You really are unsure of what you've got right now, and it's going to take. It always took us 2 or 3 games to figure out really who was going to be where, who our playmakers were really going to be, the guys we had to have on the field and that type of stuff. And of course, I tried not to worry about what was going on off the field, but I hated a first game of the year home game. I'd rather play on the road the first game because I was always the AD and had to get you ticket takers and booster club people and concession stands and junk like that. So I love first game of the year road games.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I can relate to that a little bit. Not on the scale that you have, but I always love the first game just because everybody's undefeated. The anticipation, you don't know, and more times than not, as Buck was saying, the first couple of games you'll have some guys that'll show up that you weren't sure that they had it and that they were going to show up. And you'll have, it's crazy. You'll have an injury in the season and somebody that you would have never counted on steps up and just does wonderfully, and so, but it's the anticipation of the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know for sure who you are, what your identity is going to be. In your mind what you hope it's going to be, but you don't know for sure. And then of course, you don't know for sure, especially that first rattle out of the box. You don't know how teams are going to try to defend you. You don't know how they're going to try to attack you with their offense and, what tricks they have up their sleeve. So it's just a lot of unknowns, but it's always good to get that first game out of the way.
Yeah, all that makes sense. Coaches play somebody the first game and they beat them by 35, and then you play them again in the playoffs, and you're just sitting there, worried the whole week, wondering if your players are really in tune to the game and stuff like that. Just it really makes you wonder how good that first game was for that other team or for your team.
So this may be kind of I'm trying to think how to word this, but a question that may be hard to answer, maybe not, I don't know. But is there a point, and Carl, and I know you can weigh on this from just seeing a team, but you see that first game, or you just get that feeling like, okay, this is going to be a great season. Like, this team, we got it. How do you know that?
It's really hard to know that, really, because like the coaches talked about, you don't really know who's going to step up. You don't know if they're going to improve. I mean, I've seen more teams play their best game the first game than not. And they never improve, so they don't even make the playoffs. But, there's teams, Guy would be an example. They play, I think, Alito and Cedar Hill, lose the first 2 games pretty nicely, and still wind up winning state. So, what do you really have, and how much are your players going to improve during the year is where you're going to wind up.
Well, and here's something I see too, Carl, talking about between week 1 and week 2, normally you'll see your most improvement between week 1s and week 2, because you go into week 1 not knowing, as Bob was talking about, you know, you're going to have some guys that step up and play really, really well that you weren't expecting. And then you may have some guys that you thought were players that don't quite do what you thought they would when the lights turn on Friday night. So that improvement, because you really, especially if you have a good close game. I know in 2019 I got to play Denton Geyer, and old Walsh that was when he was there. It was a 60-58 game. We didn't make many improvements or changes on offense, but boy, we sure overhauled our defense after that game. And you know, giving up 60 points in the first game and losing by 2 is not your idea of a good first game. But the second game, we were much, much better on defense.
Yeah, I would hate to face an Aledo team that gave up 60 points in the first game and you got them next on the schedule. That wouldn't be much fun. But, you know, the good thing about it, if you can somehow win that first game, you can really put the pedal down, you know, and Tim has probably won more games than I've even coached in. So he can speak on this much better than I can. But I just feel like, you know, when you win that first game, you can really coach them hard, you know, because there's always room for improvement. When you lose that first game or that second game, you know, you got to make sure you don't, you know, especially if you have a young, immature team, or maybe you're in a situation where there's not a lot of tradition. You know, you don't want to lose those guys. You don't want to, you know, make them think, you know, man, this is not the fun I thought it was going to be. So winning is always fun. As Art Briles used to say, it's a high you can't buy, and you can sure coach the kids a lot harder when you win.
So one thing I also wanted to ask all three of you about is recently Dave Campbell's. They polled, I think it was like 240 plus Texas high school football coaches over the summer, and they asked them a series of questions. Well, one of the main things that came up was NIL. And obviously all three of y'all have been around the game a very long time, but that seemed to be the biggest fear in coaching in the state of Texas. And I'm curious to get y'all's thoughts on that and where you see that heading as of 2025.
Well, I guess I'll go first.
I wish you go ahead, Carl.
You know, it's one of those difficult things. If we don't do NIL, how many athletes are we going to lose to other states? If we don't do NIL, how many backdoor deals are going to wind up happening where kids go to another school and, you know, kind of like the old Southwest Conference or NCAA before they could pay players? So how much of that is going to go on? Is it good for kids at that age to have NIL? No. But again, I think one thing that went through, you know, how many of these kids that are going to be seniors reclassify and leave instead of playing in high school their senior year, they're in college getting NIL money.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, it's not good for college football, I don't believe. You know, if they would do it the way that it was designed, if a car dealer wanted to put, you know, a kid's picture on a billboard and pay them $5,000 or $10,000, whatever that value is worth, if that's what they did, and that was the extent of it, you know, you're in a commercial or whatever it is, that would be great. I mean, I could see that being okay, but that's not what's happening. Of course, college coaches are complaining about it right now, but heck, the college coaches are the ones paying all the money. It's not an NIL based off of, you know, what you could do outside of football. It's how good a football player you are, and the schools are paying you now. I don't see that. I mean, in the state of Texas, that's not going to happen in public schools right now. The schools cannot. We're broke in Texas right now, really. There's no way public schools are going to be able to pay. Now, schools with good booster clubs, that's where it's going to become, you know, bad at the high school level, because there's some that have a lot more money in their booster clubs than what others do. That's when it's going to get bad, and you're going to see kids start wanting to transfer and move and do those type of things, I believe.
Yeah, I just think, at the college level, it is what it is, and it's a shame actually that it hasn't been better controlled and better defined, as Buck was talking about, because basically you just sign them up and the kid does nothing. But in high school, it's got to be the worst idea that I've ever heard. And there's been deception and there's been fraud since the Garden of Eden. So people will cheat. They always have cheated, and they always will cheat. But I just think for the good of the athletes and the culture of the program, it's just a really, really bad idea to give a 16, 17, 18-year-old money, NIL, 16, 18-year-old kid NIL money just because he's a good athlete. I think it's just a horrible idea. And if they are so money hungry that they transfer to another state, then let them live with that. If they're going to tear their family apart or whatever, I wish we could unite across the whole country and have the same rules and same guidelines. But obviously that's not going to happen. And then you hear the president talking about getting involved in NIL. The whole thing is ridiculous. But you've still got some purity left in high school football, and I would love to leave it that way. And like I said, you've always had people that have moved for athletic purposes, whether they can get by with it or not. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's always going to happen. It always has, and it always will, because that's just the way it is, and the way I can't see that stopping. And if it happens with NIL, it does. But I think they've got to do everything that they can to keep the purity in Texas high school football and the communities just the way it's always been, the way it was intended to be, the way our forefathers meant for it to be, and not let this thing get into a money game, because when you do that, you just, like I said, you lose the innocence and purity and culture of high school football, in my opinion.
The University of Texas Co-op is a nonprofit and has been serving the Longhorn community since 1896. Every penny of profit directly benefits course material scholarships, and, in fact, over 9,000 students will receive course material scholarships this academic year. Shop the Co-op today for all your game day gear, all while giving back to the university and its students. Book them from the Co-op. And now, back to the show. So with that, guys, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, you have NIL, you have the transfer portal now, and that was another concern. It overshadowing high school athletes. I was curious to get y'all's thoughts on how you've personally seen recruiting change, especially over the last few years.
Recruiting's crazy now. I mean, ever since Mac Brown started it back in like 2001, here we go, talking to juniors and then sophomores and now freshmen. So, stuff has totally changed in that era. I'm sure the guys, the coaches can give you better than that. So let's hear from one of them.
I'm going to tell you the recruiting now for high school, because of what, when we went through COVID and then the transfer portal and giving kids extra years, of course, the NIL, we had you'd see some really good high school football players across the country that were not getting scholarship offers because of the transfer portal. And it's still not back to where it was, where teams are giving 25 high school scholarships every year. It's getting a little bit better with the way they're changing the numbers up and the limited amount of scholarships, but you still don't see as many kids getting Division I type scholarships as what you did 10 years ago, as far as high school kids. Because simply, I guess if I'm a head college coach and I can take a kid in the portal who's a proven college football player over a high school player that we have no idea, he's 17 years old. We don't know if he's going to be a player in 3 years. So I'm going to take one, especially if they're going to let him play for 5, 6, 7 years in college. that's the problem to me. Their extended eligibility. I mean, we've seen some quarterbacks, 27-year-old quarterbacks, come out and go into the NFL at 28.
Yeah, that was tough, especially through the COVID. You had guys that would never go away, and every time a kid would come back for another year and use his COVID year, that's another high school kid that couldn't get a scholarship. They're talking about, Blake, am I not right? They're talking about increasing the number and basically eliminating walk-ons is what it would do, which is another horrible idea. Look at Michael Taft, All-American at the University of Texas. He was a walk-on. And we all know stories of guys that we've seen or coached or watched play that walked on and wind up, making it in a big time program, or it doesn't matter if they're in a big time program or not, just making it and getting on scholarship. And I have a soft spot in my heart for walk-ons because those guys come because they love to play the game. They just want to be a part of something big and contribute in any way that they can. But it is getting harder and harder, and as a result, you've got Division II schools, you've got FCS schools that are becoming a minor league for the FBS. And, you've got schools like Tulsa, North Texas, name it, we all know who they are. And they do a better job maybe of evaluating talent. And they do a great job maybe of developing players. All for what? For a guy to get on the field for them a couple of years and somebody comes in, and even it happened to Abilene Christian. I mean, the head coach there is a good friend of mine, and they've got guys being offered hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to come play, one season. So you never know who you're going to have. So it's just really a mess right now. I don't know what the answer is, but it's the transfer portal is good. I think they ought to have one time to transfer and be eligible immediately after that. They should have to sit out a year. That's just my opinion.
I like it. So on that note, I do want to ask y'all if you can make a change to the game, if you got to wave a magic wand to help Texas high school football, what would be the rule change, or whether it be wearable technology, whatever it may be, what would be y'all's one change to improve the game? Carl, we'll start with
you. A good wearable technology, sideline to player communication. That would be the best. What the UIL is trying to do, I think we all understand why they went the way they went, but most of the schools, maybe as many as 70%, aren't going to buy into, wear the watch and send the play in from your watch to their watch, and their watch, the coach's watch is up in the press box. So it's a difficult thing they're trying to do, but I understand, with cost and all that, not everybody can afford it. But again, if you could go to direct sideline communication, that would be the best thing.
Coach Buck?
Oh, I think the communication stuff is good, but that's going to go back to money again. If you've got whoever's got the most money is going to have the best communication systems, and there's some that don't have the money for it. So I still think the biggest rule change they need to look at is the blocking below the waist, because they want us to tackle below the waist. They don't want you going up hitting somebody in the head when you tackle them. If you hit them above the shoulders, there's a chance you're going to get ejected from a game. But then blocking, the 150-pound, 160-pound receiver or slot back going in and blocking a linebacker anymore, or going and blocking some of the safeties, and I'm not talking about crackback blocks and things like that. I'm just talking about, going and blocking somebody who outweighs me by 40 pounds. Now I got to go hit them in the mouth. And that's not a good matchup. So I don't understand the difference between the offense not being able to go block below the waist, but the defense, we want them to tackle below the waist. So we've got to kind of balance things out there. Now I like the fact that it's, safety wise it may be better, but I still think that's an issue for high schools, especially when you've got smaller guys trying to block big guys and trying to take them on high.
Coach Shipley?
Yeah, I think Buck's got a great point. I agree. I think the communication could be somewhat costly for some. It makes you wonder if there couldn't be, Carl, some type of grant capability, because these companies are making a lot of money. For a school district that is a lower income and can't afford it, maybe some type of grant system or something like that to help with that. But I agree with Buck, and I've never been a slot T guy. I've never been a wing T guy. I say that. I was for Bob McQueen, Buck, back at Temple. But as a head coach, I've never been slot T. But I've got my tail kicked by some of them, and they typically have smaller, quick linemen, and they get out and cut you. That's the premise of what they do, and they do it very effectively. And so when you take that advantage away from them, it makes it much more difficult. The thing I love about the slot T is you don't have to have 6'4", 270-pound offensive linemen, to be effective. You can still be effective with smaller guys. And so I agree with Buck on that. One thing, I don't know if there's any answer to this, and Buck, you can chime in on this, is that as time goes on, it's getting harder and harder for coaches to recharge their batteries and catch their breath, because everybody else, if you take a week off or you take this off, you feel like in your mind somebody's getting ahead of you. I just wonder if there can't be a dead period or something in there to make coaches, and again, you're still going to have cheaters probably, but it's just really difficult to demands, and parents and sometimes even players and school boards have no idea the time and the effort and the expense that coaches go through to go to all the things that they've got to go to support kids in other sports, 7-on-7, summer workouts, all those things. It's just it's the burnout, as the article from Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine said. It's at an all-time high, and it's difficult for coaches to keep coaches in the business, but also to even get coaches to come into the business, because the pay is not nearly what it was when Buck and I started. It was unbelievably low back then, but you could coach kids hard back then. Now you can't coach them hard because nobody wants you to hold their kid. Not nobody, but some people don't want you to hold their kids accountable. They don't hold them accountable. They certainly won't let you hold them accountable. And it just wears coaches down, to deal with all that stuff. And I don't know the answer, Buck. I'd like to hear your opinion on this, but just a way that coaches can just kind of catch their breath and be with their family and just try to curb this burnout that's going on in high school coaching across this state.
I was very fortunate to work for Ross Rogers in College Station for 5 years. And, Ross was because I'd worked for some guys that, you got, starting on Saturday morning, you get there at 7, you stayed till 9 or 10 o'clock on Saturday night, come back on Sunday right after church, stay till sometimes 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday night. Then you're right back at it, working 14 to 16 hour days, Monday through Friday. And Ross we would work hard, but we worked smart. And the thing he taught me was, hey, not only do the kids need to still be fresh in November when you hit the playoffs, but your coaches do too. And we really stressed on Saturdays not working past noon, and on Sundays, working 4 to 5, maybe 6 hours, because and it's easier now because you have all the video broken down. It's so much easier today to break your video down and do your cut ups and things like that. But I know what you're saying. I mean, I know the coaches I talked to today, I asked them, do you have a full staff? A lot of them don't have a full staff, and 15 years ago, you didn't hear of that. Or a coaching staff or a teaching, staff was not full. like we have today. And it is because of, two things. One, the burnout of the teaching and the coaching side of it for those assistant coaches. And it's something that we do have to address. And the workload now, when they started letting us, do strength and conditioning over the summer, I didn't know if I liked it or not. We did it because everybody else did it. And then they started letting us, work with them 1 day a week. And now it's 4 days a week. So, we can keep them up there for nearly 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 4 days a week over the summer. And I refused to do it the last couple of years coaching when they let us do it. We worked with them 1 day a week with the freshman varsity. We worked 1 day a week for about an hour and 15 minutes. That was it. Because I wanted my coaches to be able to have a vacation. And if a coach wanted to go on vacation, they went on vacation. If a kid wanted to go on vacation, they went on vacation. I encourage parents to take them on vacation just so that when football started in August, they weren't already tired of football. And I believe coaches have to do that. Even though the rules have changed, we still have to let our kids have fun outside of football, and our coaches.
That's interesting. That's good stuff right there for sure. All right, Carl, before we get out of here, I do want to ask you, what's a few games that people should have their eye on this weekend, opening weekends?
Hey, well, I like LaPorte and Deer Park game. That's going to be something else. And it opens their brand new $60 million stadium down in LaPorte. I think North Shore and South Oak Cliff will be another really top flight game that people can enjoy. I think that it could be a last play game too. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, lots of action around the state, no doubt about it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, we'll be back next week as well. And we'll have a little bit more to talk about because we'll have the first week in the books. So we'll see y'all then.